You ready? Okay. So I'd like to show you an example of a completed portfolio. This is the project one for this class, which is a child observation portfolio. This is an example that was created by a student last semester. I've taken out, have it upside down, of course. I've taken out most of the identifying information. So she was kind enough to include a portfolio index, which made it very nice for me. Once we go through it, we're going to look at the score sheet and see how it all worked out. So she has a index, which is not required, but it really made it nice. The first thing we have is the parent's permission slip. So in the parent's permission slip, you only need to put the child's first name, the child's birth date, and then the parent signs. And remember that if the parent requests a copy of the portfolio, you can share that with them. So the portfolio requirements state that you have to have 4 sections in your portfolio, followed by a summary paper. So the first section she has here is motor skills. So if you look at the score sheet, you can see that there are 2 items that have to be included in the motor area, and then you get to pick the 2 others. So she has, for her first artifact, she has anecdotal notes. She has 2 anecdotal notes on the little boy that she scored, which was Nolan. Actually, she put in 3, so you can't put in more than 1 anecdote. And remember, these anecdotes have to be written in a manner that is objective, which means you don't put any of your emotions in, your feelings, your opinions, your judgments. Just what you see and just what you hear. The second article that she put in was a checklist. And this is a rating scale checklist. So it goes from always, sometimes, seldom, and never. And you need to familiarize yourself with these items before you go in to observe your child. You'll be observing probably around 5 times. If you're familiar with these items, you'll have a better job getting them completed. And remember, these are the things that you'll use. This is the information you will use to support your summary paper. Now the ASQ, I'll do a whole nother video on the ASQ, but this is part that she included, and you can see that she included gross motor and fine motor skills. You can see the score over here, and we'll learn how to score those things. So this is her 3rd item, and the fine motor score was over here was 40. And then she has some student samples, and here is an example of him holding a pencil or a crayon, and he's holding it almost correctly, and he's coloring. You have him also holding small toys to play with Lincoln logs. And then you have a picture that he drew of himself, which shows pretty good motor skills for, I think this little guy was just turning 5, and he was also able to write some of the letters of his name. And there it is again, another picture and another example of how he writes his names. The second section she has is cognitive. Any questions on the motor? No. Cognitive is the next section. And again, start with 2 anecdotes. You need 2 anecdotes, at least 2 in each of the 4 areas. So she has her 2 cognitive anecdotes. And this is kind of a worksheet, although I don't like worksheets for cognitive development. Sometimes that's all you're left with in a classroom, unfortunately. But this is an interesting one because it says, I could see a light, a worm in the grass, I could hear a bird, a worm with bones inside. I used my senses on our walk today. So these were statements that it's really not a worksheet. These are statements the child said, and then the child has a drawing of each of the things that he said. So it was a walk that they took. And this is the interview of the child. And this is another one that you need to be familiar with the questions, like keep reviewing them so you get them in your head. I wouldn't try to do an interview of a child in one day. It might take 3 or 4 visits before you get all of these questions answered. You'll know when you've lost the child when they just kind of walk away from you or say, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So don't push it, back off, and ask some more questions the next time. And she also has couple of questions she included in there, which you can do. You can always take other notes on top of these. She has the rating scale for the cognitive area, which he did pretty good on. And then she has the ASQ, which is the screener that we're going to learn about. And she took the area of problem solving, which is cognitive development. And she copied off that area, and you can see his final score is a 60. She included some of his work samples. He was able to identify the different parts of his body and what color they should be. And this is a picture of him doing some pretend play. Pretend play is a cognitive ability, so he's playing in the kitchen. And then he's playing outside in a sandbox. Not quite sure what that one shows in cognitive ability, but she had it in here. This third section is language and literacy. Again, she starts with 2 anecdotes. She used the rating scale for language and literacy. She used the ASQ part that says communication. That's the same thing as language and literacy. And the score is over here. And these are some words that was dictated to the teacher, and you can see that he colored a picture, and it says, "This is my horse eating bugs." So one of the things that we have required on language and literacy is some of the child's words that are dictated to you. Dictation is when you write their words on the paper. Always ask permission. And you can always take pictures of items instead of the actual item, because oftentimes children don't want to give those things up. The final one is social emotional. And this time she has 3 anecdotes again. She has the rating scale for social emotional, and you can see by looking at this, I can tell that there's some discrepancies in his social emotional area. So I'm thinking when I grade this, I'm going to want to see that in her summary paper. So when you say something in your summary of the child's development, I'm going to look back into each section and see if that agrees with the information that you gathered from the child. And she did the ASQ again for personal social. And then this is a time sample. And you have an example of the time sample in your packet. And she only had 4 centers. Some people have 6 or 8 centers. Write as many as you can. So this is something that should be done when the children are in free play time, or center time, or choice time, work time, whatever they call it. And you can put the time up here every 5 or 10 minutes. Kind of depends on how active your child is. So if they're pretty active, you might want to put in every 5 minutes. You're trying to track what they do over a given time. And in this situation, he was playing cooperatively until he got to this part in the writing center. And TA means teacher's assistants. And then he went on to play there some more, and then he switched centers. Any questions on that time sample? Okay. This is a frequency count, which basically is tallies. It's tallies of when the child has done pro-social behavior or shown pro-social behavior, and when they have shown antisocial behavior. She did hers a little bit differently. You don't need to do it. She did like 5 of them. So every time she went to observe this child, she did it one sheet. You can just use the same sheet for all your visits. So you can see that this was a pretty good day. On this day, he had 1 antisocial behavior. So he had 1 over on this day. So again, you only need to do 1 of these, but you want to do it over a period. You don't just want to do it one day. You want to do it 3 or 4 or 5 times. If you can, make your notations down here and do a final tally at the bottom. And this is a picture of him being able to locate his name on the schedule. So social emotional skills allow children to follow the schedule and be a part of the routine. So that's why she included that one. And then she has, in her summary of development, she looked at each of the areas of the child. And I highlighted a few here because she said, Nolan is able to demonstrate age-appropriate traveling, balance, and gross motor skills. So that's her summary. And then she went on to summarize some of his gross motor skills. Fine motor skills are age appropriate. She goes on and lists some of the things that all of this information gave her about this child. And remember, what area was it where we thought he'd probably have some concerns based on her information? Social emotional, right. It says, some concerns in the area of social emotional development. These were concerns both raised by his parents in the ASQ interview and also by his classroom teacher, that this child may have some level of separation anxiety. So that information was right because she then talked about it in her summary. She went on some more about some of his social emotional skills. The third one is cognitive. She indicated that he seems to be more advanced than many of his peers. The last area is language and literacy. Nolan prefers books over most other activities and can most often be found in the reading center looking at books. And then she just gave some overall statements about his development. She also did include the entire ASQ in the back. So you can sure do that if you want to. So I don't know if I have a summary sheet in here or not. If you look at the summary sheet, you can see how many items you need to have in each area. Basically, you need to have 4 items in each area. If it has a little asterisk by it, a little star, that means you have to have that one in there. So usually there's 2 that you have to have and 2 that are your choice. So let's talk about some of the ones that she did not include. She did not, well, she did have a video, but I let her keep that. She did have a video sample of, I think it was some language activities that she was having a conversation with him, so she had a video of that. You can also do teacher comments. So if you can, you may say to your teacher, can you give me some ideas of this child's social emotional development in the classroom? How does he or she get along with their friends? And you can ask questions about their attentiveness during, say, book time to get an idea of their language and literacy. Trying to think of what else. Some people send in things that children have actually cut out as an indicator of their fine motor skills. You can have actual pictures as she did. You do have to have some examples of their actual work. Parent interview is always a good thing to have in there to know what the parents think. So I think I've covered just about everything that you can use. Any questions? Questions? All right. Thanks.